The house is on fire, and the high school table is wearing a firefighter uniform. I carried out a statue from my house that looked exactly like him. The moment the cloth around the statue's waist was torn off. Our company is dead. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. And in the yard, a bunch of firefighters surrounded my statue and marveled. It's exactly like the captain. Look at these pectoral muscles, these abdominal muscles, these thigh muscles. The lines are so smooth. The master's hand. Good girl. This statue still has a silk scarf tied around its waist. I rushed forward with a red face. Don't. It was too late, and the white silk scarf fluttered in the air, dancing with the wind, and then landed on Malcolm Tout's face. There was a gasping sound in the courtyard. It's an exaggeration, an absolute exaggeration. What do you know? This is called art. Art requires rich imagination. Imagination is to be big. The bigger the more artistic. Malcolm Tout took off the silk scarf from his face, and stayed on the statue in front of him, not taking his eyes off it for a long time. I wanted to die on the spot and explode on the spot. Carol Flynn, long time no see, looking at Malcolm Tout with a playful face. I just felt like a red-hot kettle, and the steam was coming out of the top of my head. We haven't seen each other since high school, and I've imagined 1,000 times we'd be reunited, never expecting it to be this way. Malcolm Tout and I were high school classmates, and when I moved to an art class in my junior year of high school, we rarely kept in touch. Later, I heard that he was admitted to a sports school, and after graduation, he returned to his hometown and was admitted to the firefighter. So I resolutely returned to my hometown, and opened an online store to customize statues. In the morning, the mobile phone charging cable at the bedside burned because it had been plugged in for a long time, and when I found out, it had burned off with the quilt and curtains. At that time, I was concentrating on painting in the studio, and I was anxious to call the fire alarm. The firefighters came very quickly. I didn't expect Malcolm Tout to be there, and the statue in my room was made from a real person and he probably didn't see it in a hurry, so he carried it out. The physical fitness is really good. My statue weighs almost 200 pounds. Malcolm Tout stepped forward with a silk scarf, pulled away the firefighter in front of him, and tied the scarf around his waist, in front of the statue that was almost identical to him, and they looked at him, and at the statue. Well, I look like I'm watching a sci-fi movie. Two captains. My relationship ended before it began. Destroy it. It's impossible to see Malcolm Tout again in this life. No face. I sent them out the door, and Malcolm Tout got in and out of the car and walked up to me and held out his hand. At a Weshit, at the same table. I didn't even dare to raise my head, so I took out my phone and scanned him in a panic. I didn't dare to look over until they got in the car, but Malcolm Tout just poked his head out to look at me, met with his inexplicable eyes and the smile on his lips. I turned around and ran back, but I hit the iron door with a loud bang. I put my hands on my nose, and could feel the nosebleeds rushing down, and my palms were warm and slippery. Malcolm Tout didn't know when he was back, and was looking at me worriedly. Let's go. I'll take you to the hospital. I desperately refused, but he still dragged me to the hospital, and the nurse treated the wound, let me lie down and rest for 10 minutes, and left. I blushed and embarrassed, and picked at the sheets with my hands. Malcolm Tout's voice rang out with a smile. Don't pick it. It's going to break my sleeve if you pick it again. I turned my head to see that he had rested his arms on the bed at some point, and my fingers were scratching at his clothes desperately. I think I'm being sloppy. Young people don't know how to respect tradition. I should have counted Malcolm Tout's figure go. He might have beaten me. Malcolm Tout said I was injured and insisted on taking me home and helping me sort out the aftermath of the disaster. I desperately refused, and I almost killed myself on the spot, but I couldn't stop his enthusiasm. He cleaned up the yard and my bedroom, said he would check it out to see if there were any fire hazards, And then he started checking them one by one. When he pushed open a door on my east side, I knew it was all over. There is a huge double statue in the room. The man princess holds the woman, and the woman puts one hand around the man's neck and the other hand on the man's chest. The two looked at each other, their eyes lingering, and sparks were shining. I have to say that this is a very beautiful statue, with smooth muscle texture, delicate carving techniques, and even the hair strands are faintly visible. There is also the name of this statue on the pedestal. Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, of course, were undressed. Malcolm Tout was stunned. He looked at the statue in front of him in surprise, and couldn't help but sigh. I can't see it, Carol Flynn. You're in such a good shape. He was supposed to be talking about the statue of Carol Flynn, and I pulled him out of the room with a wooden face, and pushed him out of the yard with a wooden face. Bang! The door slammed shut. Standing outside the door was no longer my first love, the man I wanted to get. It's a shame, a great shame. Malcolm Tout. Farewell. After 2 days of tidying up, I was suffocated at home and was going for a run, during which Malcolm Tout sent me a WeChat message. Eve, are you sleeping? This is murderous. Of course I choose to ignore him. The statue was a Valentine's Day gift from a boy to his wife, and I was so inspired by his itchy hands that I made a Malcolm Tout and myself. It's one of my proudest creations, usually covered with a cloth, and I just finished wiping it down that morning to dry it in the sun, and it was seen by Malcolm Tout. I drove to a park, put on my headphones and started running, and I could faintly hear the sound of neat slogans. 121, 121. I turned my head in confusion, and in an instant my frightened hair stood on end. Behind him was Malcolm Tout and his teammates, dressed in blue shorts. Malcolm Tout was visibly surprised to see me turn around, and he waved at me happily. The people behind him were even more excited, shouting there. It's the painter from last time, the one who made the captain's statue. The whole line began to riot, and many people who had never seen me rushed forward to see what I looked like. I spread my legs and ran as fast as I could, and Malcolm Tout easily caught up with his long legs. I fled. They chased. I couldn't fly. Seeing that they were about to catch up, I saw the public toilet in front of me and rushed in. 3 seconds later, there was a scream inside. A female rascal. I apologized and quit in embarrassment. I'm sorry to go to the wrong toilet. I'm sorry. Behind him was a group of smiling blue friends. Don't laugh. Stand up. Malcolm Tout shouted the slogan solemnly, and after a while he couldn't hold it back. Poof! Listening to the laughter of the audience, I turned around and continued to run forward. The society dies or something, and if you die and die, you get used to it. Today is destined to be a record-breaking day. Running to the park parking lot, I look at the pace. 5 kilometers ran into 20 minutes. Carol Flynn. I turned my head to see Malcolm Tout standing behind me for some moment. Carol Flynn. What do you see me running? His face was covered with sweat. There were beads of sweat on his half-wet hair. His eyebrows and eyes were smiling, and he was as handsome as a young man, as I remember. It made me miss sleeping. Malcolm Tout is a sports school, and I often see him sweating on the playground. Every time he has a school sports meeting, he is the brightest star. Sprint, long run, high jump, long jump. It's a decathlon. Tall and straight, with stiff and handsome facial features, he doesn't look like those idol stars. It's like a young and heroic general in an ancient saying. Spirited and full of masculinity. The girls in the school said that he was a walking hormone, and people couldn't take their eyes off it when they saw it. There are always some people who have amazed your youth and become the white moonlight in your heart. It's just that this white moonlight, if only he couldn't speak. Carol Flynn. I think there is something wrong with your statue. Although artistic creation needs imagination, but it can't be separated from reality. You should take a good look at the real thing, so that you can create better. I looked at him in disbelief. Is the physical object he is talking about the physical object that I understand? Malcolm Tout stepped forward, looking down at me with a burning gaze. Carol Flynn, I'll model you. Mannequin. I swallowed my saliva. It's really a hard suggestion to refuse. I never expected Malcolm Tout to be my model. He sat on the couch, leaning back comfortably, and looked at me fixedly, with a smile between his eyebrows. I was so overwhelmed by his eyes, that I either spilled the tea or accidentally kicked the stool. Carol Flynn, you're still so funny. I sat down across from him, with a red face and shrunk, and carefully poured the tea back on. Do I really want to be my model? I looked up at Malcolm Tout with sparkling eyes. Malcolm Tout's features are deep and well defined, with light and shade of light, making them perfect for painting. That's why I made a statue of him in the first place. If 40% of it was because of a crush, then 60% of the reason was because he was so beautiful. He himself is like the most perfect statue, with a perfectly proportioned face and a golden section figure. He is like a textbook model, and when I see him, my hands itch, and I can't suppress the vigorous desire to create. Malcolm Tout nodded and said softly, when have I ever rejected you? In just a few words, my memory was suddenly pulled back to high school. We were at the same table in my freshman year of high school, and Malcolm Tout took care of me all the time. I loved to draw and often sneak in my drawings during class, and he would kick my feet under the desk when the teacher came over. I was careless, and sometimes I forgot to bring my textbooks, and when the teacher said that I didn't bring the books to stand up, he would push his textbooks to me without hesitation, and then stand at the back of the classroom for me. We've been apart for 5 years, but he's still the warm, sunny Malcolm Tout, who hasn't changed. I flipped out an oil album and asked cautiously, I want to draw this, Bound Prom Boys. Is that okay? Malcolm Tout looked at the album and raised an eyebrow. The painting shows a half-naked man, with only a piece of cloth tied messily around his waist, and a chain wrapped around his body. The bulging muscles are tightly bound by chains, showing the most primitive strength of men and fully demonstrating the beauty of wildness. He squinted at me. Yes, when will I draw? I rubbed my feet up excitedly. You can draw now. I'll take you to the studio. I've been thinking about this painting for a long time, and I originally wanted to paint it with my own imagination, but now with Malcolm Tout as a model, it's been a long cherished wish for many years. Malcolm Tout was dumbfounded as I juggled out plastic chains, strips of rags, and background props. Carol Flynn, you've been planning this for a long time. I handed him the bib in my hand, and my face was filled with irrepressible excitement and anticipation. Malcolm Tout seemed to regret a little. He looked at me helplessly, and went to another room to change clothes. I set up my easel, and sat in my seat with joy. It felt like a dream, and today I finally had the opportunity to paint my muse myself. The moment Malcolm Tout pushed the door in, my breath stopped. His body was more perfect than I had imagined, and the one I had drawn was a bit more European than muscular figures, but Malcolm Tout's was clearly more in line with Asian aesthetics. His muscles are not as exaggerated as those of Europeans, and his lines are slender and smooth, broad shoulders, strong pecs, well-defined 8-pack abs, and a looming mermaid line. His face turned red when he looked at me, and he stepped forward to direct him to pose, and his heart was about to jump out of his mouth. Once Malcolm Tout was in a pose, I wrapped the prop chain around him, inevitably touching his skin. His skin was fine, smooth and delicate, and I felt like my fingertips were on fire, and an electric current flowed from my fingers to my heart, jumping in my internal organs. My hands were still shaking when I sat down, and it was like a well-made dream that I would never wake up. The sunlight shone through the window on Malcolm Tout, and the whole scene suddenly seemed vivid. Malcolm Tout seemed to be looking at me all the time, but my mind was already on the brush in my hand. I don't know how long it took, but there seemed to be a noise at the door, and it was very noisy. Listen inside, you're surrounded, hurry up and release the hostages. Listen inside, you're surrounded, hurry up and release the hostages. A rugged male voice rang out from the horn. I may not have slept well lately, and have auditory hallucinations. Listen inside, you're surrounded, hurry up and release the hostages. The rugged male voice sounded again. With a paintbrush in hand, I walked towards the door in confusion. Through the rust-mottled fence, several police cars were parked outside the yard, and police officers with guns could be seen next to them. Seeing me come out, there was a commotion in the crowd. Hands up! I raised my hands blankly, and I could catch a glimpse of several people, standing in the trees in the courtyard next door. Oh, the kidnapper is a pretty little girl. Didn't you read the martial arts novels that girls, especially pretty girls, are the most dangerous? Kidnappers. Where are the kidnappers? At this time, Malcolm Tout heard the increasingly exaggerated movement and walked out topless. When I was drawing, I always felt that something was missing, so I drew some blood-stained scars on Malcolm Tout's body. Seeing a half-naked man with scars all over his body come out, the audience boiled. Oh my God! Captivity! Mistreat! It's exciting! Oh my God! This man's figure is so good! Oh my God! Aunt Leo, come and see! Don't be afraid, comrade, we're here to save you. You! Don't move! Hands high! A tall middle-aged policeman shouted at me with a bullhorn. No, I don't want to raise my hands, I want to get down, the face-down kind. Malcolm Tout and I, who were half-naked, were taken away by the police, and when we left the village, there were so many onlookers that the car couldn't get out at all. It was the police who found the village cadres, and cleared the crowd before they were able to get out. Because of my work, I need an independent yard and a relatively open studio. That's why I rented this urban village, where the rent is cheap, and the transportation is convenient. The only bad thing is that the people in the village are more nosy. Seeing that I'm a single girl renting a big yard by myself, there are already a lot of people whispering, and there are often people behind my back who ask me what I do. That's it. It also implicated Malcolm Tout. The head of the police station looked at Malcolm Tout with an embarrassed expression. Hey Malcolm Tout, you said this. Didn't the water wash away the Dragon King Temple, Tilda? I'm really sorry. We also received an alert from the village, saying that someone had kidnapped us, and sent us a photo. You can take a look. Malcolm Tout and I leaned over to look at our phones. The photo should have been taken on the second floor of the opposite door, and through the flying white curtains, a blood-stained man could be vaguely seen tied to the middle of the room. It's no wonder that people misunderstood. At first glance it does look like kidnapping. I kept my head down, feeling like I was about to get brain congestion. As Malcolm Tout walked out of the police station gate, he looked at me and couldn't help but laugh. Carol Flynn, it's so much fun to be with you. I looked at him with a crooked brow of laughter. Malcolm Tout, you don't understand. How to be terrible. You won't be able to laugh in a few days. Malcolm Tout went to report to the team after dropping me off at the village, and I was standing at the village shop to buy water, and I vaguely heard someone talking about me. Young people nowadays have so many flowers, they really know how to play. Where are they like us old antiques? Tut tut, that's it, that chain. Oops, shame on you. I turned my head and saw two ants who were foaming at the mouth. Auntie, your expression doesn't look shy at all. The next day I was still sleeping. I was woken up by a ringing of my mobile phone. I picked up the phone in a daze. Hey, daughter, did you hear that? Mom, what did you hear? Oh, that's that Malcolm Tout, your high school classmate. He was going on a blind date with my best friend's daughter, and his parents liked him. I didn't expect him to enter the police station yesterday. I heard that he tied up other girls, whipped them, and whipped other girls' flesh and blood. Oh, what a pervert. You guys seem to be pretty good in high school. I was thinking that this boy was good, and could be a son-in-law in the future, but I didn't expect it to be so perverted. It's really terrible. You must stay away from him to know if it's okay. I hung up the phone in shame. It turned out that Malcolm Tout was not my nemesis, I was his nemesis, and now it was over, and his reputation was ruined by me. What if Malcolm Tout can't get a wife from now on? Or do you want to pay him for yourself? It didn't seem impossible, I couldn't help but swallow, when I thought of his sturdy figure and handsome face. I took out my phone, and sent Malcolm Tout back to Weshet. Do you have time at night? Please have a meal. The phone didn't respond, so I threw it down, got up and started drawing. Recently, I received a private customization, and the customer wanted to imitate the techniques of Western oil painting, and draw a picture of a lady in the Tang dynasty, the kind without clothes. I had been composing in the studio all day, and by the time I came back to my senses, it was already evening, and I rubbed my sore shoulders and wrists, intending to go for a walk in the park opposite. As soon as I went out, I found that there were ants around the door, and their eyes lit up when they saw me go out. I looked at the road out of the village, and on the road, there were several ants who were foaming at the mouth of melon seeds, and glancing at each other. Can't hide, this way, the dog has to be discussed. Ah, Miss Carol Flynn, why are you going? Hello Aunt Leo, I'll go for a walk. Aunt Leo immediately used her arm to pestle Aunt Jong beside her. Oh, go on a date. Isn't it going to find your boyfriend? Oops, Carol Flynn, you're so blessed, your boyfriend is so handsome. No, I'm just going to take a walk in the park across the street. Has your boyfriend lived here since then? Oh, I heard that he is still a firefighter, a fire captain, TSK, a firefighter, good physical strength. I chose to shut up and ran away with my face in my face. In the evening, there were not many people in the park, and many of the older people hurried home to cook. I wandered to a remote place, and was about to sit down and rest, when I heard a cry coming from ahead. Is there anyone? Help! I ran over and saw that it was a boy about 8 or 9 years old. His head was stuck in the railing, and his body was half crouched on the ground, which looked particularly funny. Sister! Come and save my sister. The little boy has a tiger head, a red face, and looks quite cute. I crouched in front of him and touched his head. Ha 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 ha! Are you the legendary big-headed son? This can be stuck? The little boy glared at me unhappily. My head isn't big at all, it's because the railing is too thin. I gestured with my hand, such a large distance, still say fine. The devil sent God, and I stuck out my head. A minute later, I got stuck on the railing with the little boy. How could you have such a stupid woman? I held out my hand, and gave him a chestnut. Hurry up and call someone. The little boy looked indignant. Why do you want me to shout? Because I'm afraid of losing face. Help! Someone's coming. Forced by my obscenity, the little boy began to shout. After shouting for a while, not a single bird flew. Sister, why don't you go out with your phone? I squatted on my side and was changing legs, and my legs were numb after squatting for too long. Because I'm stupid. Just when the two of us were squatting to despair, an ant finally passed by. I looked at the familiar face, and tried to reach out to cover the little boy's mouth, but it was too late. Aunt Leo, why don't you come for a walk too? Oops, Ziahen. Grandma has found you. So this little boy is Aunt Leah's grandson. Oh, Carol Flynn, why are you here? I looked at Aunt Leah's indescribable expression, and hung my head in despair. It's over, and tomorrow the village will be full of my legends. I thought this was the end, but I didn't expect it to be the beginning. Aunt Leo took out her mobile phone, and dialed 119. The firefighters came quickly, and I caught a glimpse of the familiar figure from afar. This lesbian, please raise your head a little higher, we are not easy to operate like this. I hung my head and tried to cover my face with the hair on both sides. Oh my God, isn't this Carol Flynn's boyfriend? Carol Flynn, your boyfriend is here. Aunt Leo slapped her thigh excitedly. A strong hand pinched my chin, and lifted my face. I was forced to look up, and meet Malcolm Tout's smiling face. The firefighter next to me seemed to recognize me, and greeted me with a bright smile. "Ah, hello great painter." Malcolm Tout spoke to me as he carefully pried the railing open with his tools. "Carol Flynn, you don't need to do this, if you want to see me. I'm not. I didn't." "Don't talk nonsense." Aunt Leo next to her already pricked up her ears, so she almost installed an antenna on her head. "I didn't reply to your message in the morning because I was training, and then I replied to you when I was free, but you didn't reply. I'm on duty tonight. Why don't we have breakfast together tomorrow?" I crouched down and turned my face to look at him. He was concentrating on prying the railing, his side face like a layer of golden light, under the illumination of the setting sun. The bridge of the nose is high, the thin lips of the character, and the jawline is curved. The person I like has the most handsome side face in the world. Grizzled and followed Aunt Leo back to the village. Aunt Leo is a well-known big mouth. She knows one thing, and the whole village knows. It seems that I can't get off this heat, and I deserve to be the #1 celebrity in the village. When I went back to my room and picked up my phone, there were several messages from Malcolm Tout. I looked at his avatar, blushed, and changed his note to Adam. In the studio, I didn't bother to hand in the drawing, so I took out the halfway drawing I had drawn for Malcolm Tout and looked at the person in the portrait with fascination. I ran my fingers over Malcolm Tout's face, and I don't know when I will be able to touch his real person. Before I knew it, it was already dark, and I touched my stomach and was about to go to the kitchen to make something to eat, when I heard a noise from the bedroom. The sound was soft, as if something had fallen to the ground and was quickly picked up. My heart tightened instantly, and someone came into my bedroom. Because of the geographical location of this village, there are many tenants from outside, and people are often stolen. Not long ago, the family in the west of the village turned in the middle of the night, and 3 thieves injured the man, and the matter was quite big. My room, can't it be a thief too? I swallowed and quickly dialed Malcolm Tout's number. "Hey." Malcolm Tout's low, magnetic voice came from the other end of the line. "Hey, husband, why haven't you come back yet?" I deliberately spoke in a very loud voice to make sure the people in the bedroom could hear me. Malcolm Tout on the other end of the phone was stunned, and asked hesitantly for a long time. "Carol Flynn, did you make the wrong call? What? Is it at the entrance of the village? Then I'll pick you up. I'm a little hungry, let's go have supper." "Husband, drive slowly, the road at the head of the village has been dug a hole during the day." My palms were sweaty, and I was talking loudly on the phone as I feigned composure and walked to the door. "Carol Flynn, is something wrong with you? I'll come right over." I strode to the door, and then slammed the door hard, and the big iron door behind me made a loud clang. After taking 2 steps, I quickly ducked back and hid sideways by the fence, pulled out the small mirror in my pocket, and looked through it to my bedroom. I only pulled a white screen, and the lights were turned off in the bedroom, and the light was dim, and I could only see vaguely. After waiting for a while, 2 figures appeared on the white screen. I covered my mouth tightly, afraid that I would scream. After confirming that there was someone in the house, I didn't dare to stay any longer, so I walked a few steps forward with my body low, and then immediately threw off my legs and ran wildly. There is a small supermarket at the entrance of the village, and the night in the countryside is quiet early, but it is only 10 o'clock at the moment, and the store has closed early. I stood under the neon light in front of the supermarket, still trembling nervously and my heart pounding, touched his face, and sure enough, he felt a sweat. "Are thieves so bold now? It's not too late, but dare to come home." Just then, a black car pulled up on the side of the road, and Malcolm Tout strode over. "Carol Flynn, are you all right?" I threw myself into his arms and hugged his waist. "Husband, why did you come?" Malcolm Tout hugged me tightly, patting me on the back with one hand comfortingly. "All right, good, it's okay." I felt his scorching body temperature and hard chest, and my scared sanity gradually returned. I seemed to have just called him husband. My mom. But Malcolm Tout's arms are so warm. He's so tall. It's so safe to be held by his strong arms. I was a little reluctant to leave. Carol Flynn, what's going on? After a while, I finally reluctantly left Malcolm Tout's arms. Malcolm Tout, there's a thief in my house. Thinking of those two dark shadows in the darkness, I even spoke with a slight trembling sound. Thankfully, I didn't go to bed in my bedroom early, but in the studio, and hard work saved me. Malcolm Tout looked serious and touched my head worriedly. It's okay, I'll go with you to have a look. When he finished speaking, he took my hand. He did it first. I immediately took him with one hand and put the other on his arm, pressing half of my body against him. Malcolm Tout, I'm scared. He lifted his arm unnaturally, just hitting my chest. Malcolm Tout didn't dare to move for a moment, and I was a little embarrassed. So I could only pretend that nothing had happened and explain to him in detail what had happened. The two of them walked together for a while, and finally arrived at my house, and I was a little afraid to go in. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Malcolm Tout pushed the door open, and I followed him into the room. The bedroom was turned upside down. My underwear and panties were thrown to the floor, and my nightgown was turned out. Malcolm Tout also found 2 cigarette butts near the window. An ominous premonition flashed through my mind that it was most likely not a thief. I followed Malcolm Tout back to the studio. I found my easel on the ground, and my sketch of a lady was missing. A terrible conjecture appeared in my mind, and I rushed to the bedroom again without fear. Malcolm Tout stood to the side, watching me scramble through my closet. Sure enough, several sets of underwear were missing. I'm being targeted. Ever since the firefighters came to the house to protest against a statue that day, there has been a lot of gossip about me in the village. Some say I'm doing an improper job, and some say I'm bringing men home every day. Others said that I was not a serious woman, and that my house was full of statues, portraits, and tools without clothes. There are 3 sects and 9 streams in the village, and I should be targeted by a few perverts. That's why they roamed into my room at night, not to steal, but to attack me. Malcolm Tout saw my trembling body and pale face, and realized something was wrong. Carol Flynn, what's wrong? After listening to what I said, Malcolm Tout's face was also a little ugly. Carol Flynn, you can't live here. Although this courtyard is large, the fence is very low, and it is easy for adult men to climb in. Your doors are also very simple locks, and they can be opened with a little trick, which is really unsafe. But I still have to work, and both statues and paintings require a lot of space, especially statues, and the height of ordinary houses is too low, so it's not easy to make. I sat on the bed in frustration, looking at the clothes all over the floor, and wanted to cry without tears. Malcolm Tout crouched down and took my hand and rubbed my head. It's okay, you go and stay with me. You continue to work here during the day, and sleep with me at night. I looked up at him in amazement. Go to live with him. Stay with Malcolm Tout. Is this good? Will it affect your search for a girlfriend? The moment the words came out, I felt like I was a little green tea. No. Anyway, my reputation is already stinking, and everyone says I'm a pervert, and I can't find a girlfriend for the time being. Malcolm Tout looked at me tenderly, a smile on the corner of his eyebrow. I dragged out my suitcase and happily began to pack. Lonely men and widows, living in the same room, strong in blood, dry wood and fire. Hey, 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 if you accidentally laugh out loud. What do you want to be so happy? I want to dry firewood and make a fire. I wanted to bite my tongue off in frustration, but the words were already out and I couldn't take it back. Where's the fire? I'm in charge of putting out fires. I looked up at Malcolm Tout. He's driving, isn't he? Right. I dragged my luggage and locked the door, and went to his house with Malcolm Tout. Malcolm Tout lives in a high-end community in the city, and the property is quite strict, with one elevator and one household, and you need to swipe the access card to get on and off the elevator. And there are street lights and surveillance everywhere in the community, which gives me a full sense of security. His house is a 3-room apartment of about 130 square meters, with simple and warm decoration, which looks like a marriage room for a young couple. You can stay in the guest room. I don't usually go home to stay, and I only come back when I'm on vacation. Malcolm Tout gave me a brief tour, and then moved out a new futon to help me put it on. His skillful movements made me happier the more I watched. After getting married, Malcolm Tout must be a good husband, and he does housework faster than me. Carol Flynn, trying to take him down. I stood aside and looked at Malcolm Tout with a gurgling sound. Malcolm Tout turned to look at me, with a smile, and walked over to my head with a flick. Wait, let you see my craft. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the kitchen. He's going to cook for me. I followed him to the dining room, where I sat down in a chair, and watched Malcolm Tout tie up the crowd with my hands on my cheeks. No wonder it is said that men who can cook are the most handsome. This broad shoulders, thin waist, straight hips, and long legs of 1.8 meters. I seemed to be hungrier, and began to salivate in my mouth. Malcolm Tout moved quickly, cooking a bowl of noodles in 3 or 2 clicks, and I sat up straight in anticipation and looked at the noodles in front of me with reverence. A bowl of black, slimy paste. I looked up at Malcolm Tout, who was looking at me expectantly, and his eyes seemed to say, "Praise me, praise me." This is Malcolm Tout's burning. Maybe it's just a bad look. I tentatively took a chopstick and put it in my mouth. Mommy, this is knocking over the salt shaker, right? Salty, bitter, sour and spicy. How much seasoning is this? I swallowed in disgust, and the light in Malcolm Tout's eyes vanished, and he lowered his eyes in frustration, hiding his frustration under his long eyelashes. Isn't it delicious? Hey, I don't really have any talent for cooking. I glanced at the noodles in the bowl, and didn't have the courage to take another bite, not even if it was burned by Malcolm Tout. Are you hungry or not? I'll cook it for you. I pushed my chair away and walked over to Malcolm Tout, my hands around his waist, and undid his apron. It wasn't until I stood in front of him that I realized that I was abrupt. This action is too ambiguous. As if deliberately hugging him, I lowered my head, and I could feel Malcolm Tout's burning breath on my forehead, bringing a burst of warmth. His waist is so thin that I can wrap my hands around him. Malcolm Tout held up his hand so I could untie the knot in his apron. It was just an apron, and Malcolm Tout tied a dead knot for some reason. I tried my best to solve it, but my face turned red inch by inch. We were so close that we felt like we could stick together with a light leaning in. I could even hear Malcolm Tout's powerful heartbeat, and feel the tension in his body. Malcolm Tout was a head taller than me, and I stood in front of him, my face just against his chest. His chest was heaving violently, and he almost touched the tip of my nose several times. I blushed and struggled to untie the knots, and my nose was covered with fine beads of sweat, a little itchy. Finally, I let out a deep breath that blew on Malcolm Tout's chest, and he seemed to tremble all over. As I slowly withdrew my hands, Malcolm Tout moved. He took my forearm with both hands, fastened my hand to his waist, and then put his arm around me himself. Malcolm Tout hugged me. I looked up in surprise to meet Malcolm Tout's gaze. His eyes deepened and heated like molten slurry. When he stared at me intently, there was a faint light in his eyes. It's a daunting light. It's as if one is not careful, it will swallow me. Jingle bell tilde. Malcolm Tout's cell phone rang, and the loud ringtone woke us up, and I took a sharp step back and began to gasp violently. I was so nervous just now, so nervous that I forgot to breathe. Malcolm Tout picked up the phone, his expression immediately becoming serious. Yes, it's coming soon. Carol Flynn, I have an urgent mission to leave immediately. You remember to lock the door. I shouldn't be back tonight. I looked at his back in a hurry. Almost. Just a little. We're kissing. Walking to the table stupidly, I looked at the noodles on the table, a little reluctant to pour it out, thought about it, took out my mobile phone and took a photo, and added it to my favorites. I recooked myself a bowl of tomato and egg noodles, and I ate it while thinking about how I could catch those perverts. To install a few monitors. It is best to have a fierce big dog in the yard, otherwise it will not be safe to stay during the day. I drank too much water during the day, so I got up in a daze to go to the toilet, and only when I returned to bed with my eyes half closed after going to the toilet did I realize that something was wrong. A thick arm wrapped around my waist, and encircled me in his arms. Carol Flynn, you did it on purpose, right? Malcolm Tout is back. This is his bed. Malcolm Tout's exhalation squirted into my neck, giving me goosebumps all over my body. I turned my back to Malcolm Tout and didn't dare move. Malcolm Tout, when did you come back? I could feel Malcolm Tout's hands rubbing against my waist, fingertips rough and palms burning. He seemed to be kissing my neck and shoulders, and my body was lit by him, with clusters of small flames that burned my mind and soul. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time, but for some reason, I'm a little scared when it comes. I pulled Malcolm Tout's hand away, jumped out of bed and ran out of the room. I'm sorry I made the wrong. I wrapped myself in the covers, my head steaming hot. There is a reason why I have been a widow king for so many years, and I miss such a good opportunity like this. I couldn't help but regret it, but I definitely didn't have the courage to go to his room again. Just hesitated, tangled, and fell asleep excitedly. When I woke up the next day, Malcolm Tout was gone, and I was relieved and a little regretful. He must like me, but why didn't he confess to me? I still have some traditions in my bones, and I always feel that it's not good to be so intimate without being a boyfriend or girlfriend. He doesn't just want to have fun, does he? After thinking about it for a long time, I packed up and went out. I first went to the digital city to buy a bunch of cameras, then went to the pet market to buy a wolf dog and a bunch of dog food, and then followed the pet store car back to the urban village. I was relieved after directing people to install cameras, set up dog houses in the yard, and install a few outdoor lights in the yard. The manuscript that I had worked so hard to draw was stolen and had to be redrawn. When I was busy, my mom called. Carol Flynn, you go home tonight, and arrange a blind date for you tomorrow at noon. Blind date? Mom, I said I don't want a blind date. What's the matter? If you don't go on a blind date, you still want to go to heaven. Women are like flowers. You don't look for a partner when you're young. Do you have to wait until you're old? If you don't come back, your leg will be broken. I hung up angrily, but I didn't dare not go home. There's no way. If I don't go back, my mother can kill my studio in an hour and make me uneasy. What can I do but be obedient? I can't sever the mother-daughter relationship. Malcolm Tout, I'm going home tonight, and my mom has arranged a blind date for me tomorrow. I looked at my phone nervously. If Malcolm Tout really wanted to be with me and see me go on a blind date, there would always be a reaction, right? Okay, stay safe. Malcolm Tout was quick to reply to the message, and I looked at the short words and almost threw my phone away in anger. He was actually indifferent. So what was yesterday's ambiguity? This scumbag. After tidying up the studio, I went home unhappy. Look at your coffin face. Daughter, Mom is from here. Mom won't hurt you. My mom chattered while cutting fruit, pouring milk, and carrying snacks for me. You don't want to go on a blind date, then you should bring a boyfriend back. As long as the other party has a good character, has a stable job, looks good, parents are reasonable, and the family is passable, your mother and I will not disagree. Malcolm Tout fits all of them, but it seems like I'm shaving my head and picking my head hot, and people may just want to have fun. Seeing that I was downcast, My mom changed her strategy again. Hey, your mother and I are also old. You look at my white hair. I don't know how many more days I can live. My mother just wanted to see you get married before she died. And there was a good man who could take care of you. Otherwise, how can you let me and your father go with peace of mind? Mom, if I'm not mistaken, you're only 48 this year. In order to persuade me to go on a blind date, the family was very lively, and the 7 aunts and 8 aunts gathered at table and spoke bitterly to me one by one. Some say how good the man's conditions are, and some say how pitiful the old people in the nursing home. A bunch of people gossiped, and I was dizzy and dizzy. Sister Carol Flynn, your boyfriend is here. The world fell silent for a moment, and I looked up in confusion to see Malcolm Tout with a smile on his face. Hello uncles and aunts. My name is Malcolm Tout, and I'm Carol Flynn's boyfriend. Malcolm Tout greeted my relatives generously. I've got something in the car, Carol Flynn. Come and get it for me. Shocked, I followed Malcolm Tout out of the house, shutting out the room to myself. You. The tongue was taken by a cat. Why are you here? I'm chasing my wife. If I don't come again, my wife will be snatched away. I looked at him with a red face. What kind of wife? What is he talking about? Ha ha ha, so happy. Malcolm Tout pinched my face. Laugh if you want. Don't hold back. I turned my head sideways and dodged his hand. When will I become your wife? I just called my husband yesterday, and I won't admit it today. Malcolm Tout took my hand and opened the trunk of the car. Whoa! There was an exclamation in the room, and all faces were pressed against the window to look at us. I looked into his car, and in the trunk was a truckload of roses, with a pink cardboard box in it. Malcolm Tout opened the box and pulled out a dazzling diamond necklace. Carol Flynn, I know your concerns. I've never been a casual person. I've liked you for a long time, and I know you like me too. I'm going to be very busy at work, and I may not have that much time to spend with you, but I'm serious about being with you. After meeting your parents, I want to take you to my house so that both parents can witness our relationship together. Carol Flynn, would you like to? My dream came true, and I threw myself into Malcolm Tout's arms with red eyes. There is no happier thing in the world than the person you like and happens to like you. Malcolm Tout and I carried the big bags in the back seat home. In front of my mother's cannibalistic eyes, I took Malcolm Tout's hand and sat down on the couch obediently. Malcolm Tout, you've always liked this kid, aunt. Yes, just last time. Oh, you said that thing was so ugly. We all heard about it here. You and the woman who tied it up. It's not going to be easy. I put my hand over my forehead and was done, forgetting to explain it to my mom. Mom, actually, that woman is me. What? My mom and my dad screamed in unison, almost deafening my ears. Oh, it's not what you think. After listening to my stumbling explanation, my mother breathed a sigh of relief, and then her face changed, and she began to pat me again. You kid, if you have a boyfriend, don't talk about it early. I knew you had a boyfriend. What are we going to do on a blind date for you? It's a waste of effort. The meal was so hard that the 7 aunts and 8 aunts turned into cadres at the population registry and didn't have time to take a bite of the dishes that Malcolm Tout interrogated. I secretly held his hand under the table, and I only felt the joy in my heart bubble up like a fountain. I didn't have to go on a blind date, so I naturally went back with Malcolm Tout. Good news for you, those 2 scoundrels have been caught. I looked at Malcolm Tout in amazement. So fast. How did you catch it? It turned out that Malcolm Tout had taken the cigarette butts he had picked up that day and ground to the police station, and called the police. In fact, there are several monitors installed in the village, and according to the monitoring investigation, the location of the 2 hooligans was quickly locked, and it was the tenant in the village who worked in the auto repair shop next door. The policeman took the cigarette butt and said that he wanted to test his DNA, and even coaxed and scared, and the 2 quickly recruited. In the future, you will move to my place at night, otherwise I will not be at ease. I'll think about it. Malcolm Tout took a turn and drove onto an abandoned side road at the head of the village. Why did you stop here? I turned my head to look at him in amazement. Malcolm Tout had already put one hand on the back of my head and kissed it. In a trance, there seems to be a slightly sour sweet smell of green fruits on the tree lingering between the wings of the nose. Have you thought about it? Malcolm Tout's shrunk voice flowed from between his lips and teeth. Do you want to think about it a little longer? Hey. We pressed each other's foreheads against each other, and I gasped and nodded gently. The end.